Hello everyone, it's Mimi here. BMS working in the NHS. And today's video will be about digital pathology, image capture and analysis, which is part of the IBMS specialist portfolio in cellular pathology. So, just a quick introduction to this video. It will be short and sweet, I promise. I will discuss knowledge requirements, competence requirements, reflective statement, evidence of achievement, Q&A suggestions, evidence ideas, and some helpful tips to make candidates' portfolio really good. With all that said, I hope you will enjoy the content of my video and I hope you will learn a lot. So let's dive into the third subsection of the fifth section, microscopy and image capture, called digital pathology, image capture and analysis. The knowledge requirement explains what knowledge is expected of the candidate in relation to the relevant subsection. Candidates should be able to demonstrate their knowledge at the specialist level. Think about what knowledge they had as a Band 5 BMS. How would that differ to the knowledge of a Band 6 BMS? That specialist level of knowledge would allow the candidate to troubleshoot, problem solve, verify or validate. The first knowledge requirement is principles of digital pathology systems, Z-stacking, scanning, storage and system access and security. Candidate needs to have the knowledge and understanding about various digital pathology systems. You could ask the candidate to explain, what is digital pathology, to name digital pathology systems available for histology, to explain their principles and how they work, to explain the image storage, system access, and security when it comes to digital pathology, to explain Z-stacking. When addressing this knowledge requirement, candidates should consider whole slide imaging, telepathology systems, gross imaging, image management software, computer-aided pathology systems, AI and image analysis tools and their principles, workflow integration, QC, and validation. For Z-stacking, they should consider extended depth of produce in focus image from 3D section, axial data acquisition to take series of 2D images at precise distance, precise positioning, image combination by stacking of images, 3D reconstruction. For storage and accessibility, they should consider local desktop software and storage, web-based platforms, attached storage, optical media, or printouts. For security, they should consider password protection, encryption, DID tools, multi-factor authentication, network security, audit trail, IT infrastructure, regulatory approvals like IVDR or FDA, regulatory bodies like HIPAA or GDPR. The second knowledge requirement is the use of macroscopic and microscopic images in professional practice, e.g. teaching, MDT, referral. Candidate needs to have the knowledge and understanding about the use of images in practice. You could ask the candidate to name macroscopic and microscopic image systems used in your lab, to purpose in histology, to explain the use of macroscopic and microscopic images in practice like for teaching or referrals. When addressing this knowledge requirement, candidates should consider MPICs, empath, and other systems for taking macroscopic images, whole slide imaging, if imaging, photographs or Z-stacking images. Macroimaging for documentation, sampling, orientation, inking, staging, communication, education, remote consultation, traceability or sharing. Use of microimaging for diagnosis, ancillary testing, remote reporting, MDT, education, image preservation, especially important for staining, and so on. The third knowledge requirement is principles of recording cellular pathology images. Candidate needs to have the knowledge and understanding about recording pathology images. You could ask the candidate to name systems used to record images in your lab, to explain their principles, to list steps taken when the images are being recorded, to explain methodology used when recording images. When addressing this knowledge requirement, candidates should consider principles of microimages recording like scanning, image creation, high resolution, slide representation, slide digitalization, standardization, quality and regulation, principles of macroimages recording and systems that can be used like MacroPath, various digital cameras, PathVision, DICOM, PathStand, Grodis HD, PaxCam HD grossing station, SOPs, and methodology used. The fourth knowledge requirement is need for accurate storage of images under the terms of appropriate data protection legislation. Candidate needs to have the knowledge and understanding about importance of accurate storage of images. You could ask the candidate to name the requirement that need to be met to store images safely, to name legislations that govern image, to explain how images are stored in your lab to ensure accuracy and safety. When addressing this knowledge requirement, candidates should consider requirements like security, confidentiality, data integrity, data accuracy, retention time, audit trail, data recovery, backup, integration, encryption, DID tools, safe accessibility, regulation, GDPR, HTA, RCPath, UCAS, ISO standards, IVDR, HIPAA, or CLIA in USA, your local methodologies and SOPs that are being followed. The fifth knowledge requirement is know the process for image backup via IT networks or disks. Candidate needs to have the knowledge and understanding about image backup. You could ask the candidate to explain, what is the backup process for images followed by your lab, to name options used for backup of images, to list steps taken during backup of images, to explain the importance of image backup. When addressing this knowledge requirement, candidates should consider disks and their setup, Windows process, selection of disks, execution and post-backup ejection, IT networks and the preparation, mapping, Windows process, credentials and third-party tools, key steps for a backup like setup, automation, incremental backups, retention rules, testing and encryption. Competence requirement is basically a combination of knowledge, skills, and experience candidate needs to perform a job to a satisfactory standard. Candidates' chosen evidence should demonstrate these competence requirements. The following competence requirements need to be met for this subsection. The first competence requirement is scan slides for digital pathology systems, assessing quality of scanned images. Candidates should be able to scan slides and assess image quality. Does the candidate scan slides in your lab? Do they assess quality of images? Do they follow correct methodology and SOPs? When addressing this competence requirement, candidate could consider their training and competence, SOPs and method used, digital system used, steps of quality assessment, need for calibration, EQA assessment criteria, controls used, documentation. The second competence requirement is describe the use of cameras for macroscopic and microscopic imaging of cellular pathology specimens. Candidates should be able to describe use of cameras. Can the candidate describe how cameras are used to take macroscopic images of histology samples? Can they describe how digital systems are used to take microscopic images of histology samples? Can they name cameras or systems used for taking images in your lab? Do they use those cameras and systems? When addressing this competence requirement, candidate could consider their training and competence in using various cameras or systems, SOPs, and methods followed, image systems used like Path or PathVision for macroscopic images, or various digital scanners for microscopic images, resolution and integration of those systems, use for grossing, reporting, sharing, education or MDTs. Each section also contains reflective statement which is asking the candidate to summarize their role in the lab in the context with each section. When they complete all the subsections within each section, they will be required to write a reflective statement. They also need to write a personal reflection on their training and why they chose their evidence. To prepare for that, ask them to write a smaller reflective statement for each subsection. What is their role and context of this subsection within the lab? What does their evidence demonstrate? Ask them to write a smaller justification as to why they chose their evidence for this subsection. Also ask them to write about what was their training like when to this subsection. Writing a smaller reflective statement at the end of each subsection will then make it much easier for them at the end of the section. Each subsection also has evidence of achievement. This is a part where you, the training officer, sign the candidate off as competent and fit to practice as a BMS at the specialist level. By doing that, you will confirm that the candidate can work in accordance with local SOPs relevant to this subsection. This will also confirm that candidate has answered questions set by you to test their knowledge and skills relevant to this subsection. And you will also confirm that candidate's chosen evidence demonstrates their competence, relevant to this subsection. The candidate will need to be signed off as competent by an internal assessor for each subsection. They can be signed up by you, the training officer, senior BMS overseeing relevant section, or by the training lead. These are some example questions you could give your candidate to test their knowledge and skills about this subsection. These should be based around the knowledge and skill requirements mentioned earlier. These are some more example questions you can ask your candidate to complete, to test their knowledge and skills about this subsection. You could ask the candidate to complete tables you created, based on knowledge requirements. Supporting evidence should be selected by the candidate. It needs to be based around the competency requirements, and be relevant for each subsection. The evidence should allow the candidate to demonstrate their competence in each subsection. It should be specific and relevant to the candidate's in-house practice. It should also demonstrate candidate's specialist competence. If you would like to see specific ideas for supportive evidence, please have a look at the video for trainees. Link will be included in the video description. I would also like to share with you some helpful tips that can make candidates' portfolio look really good. Ask them to try and present the information in various formats such as tables, pictures, photographs, diagrams, flowcharts, graphs, or even videos, if they can. This nicely breaks down a lot of text that is usually present in specialist portfolios. Ask them to try and make it a little bit more interesting to the reader, which will be you, and eventually the assessor. Ask them to try and put themselves in your or the assessor's shoes. How would they like to read hundreds of pages of plain text? There is a saying I really like, and it goes like this: a picture 1,000 words. I will make a video where I will share with you my evidence I used for my portfolio back in the day. Hopefully that will help. Also ask them to try and use various types of evidence, not just one type, like case studies, for each subsection. They could use experiments, case studies, annotated results, annotated photographs of them performing tasks, evidence of troubleshooting, annotated EQA results, nonconformances, validation verification evidence, comparisons of different approaches and their pros and cons, control material production, certificates of course attendance with reflective statements, annotated images or charts, and so on. Ask them to try and bring in their personality. Ask them to think about the ways they like to learn best. If experimenting, let them perform experiments. If they like troubleshooting, let them perform troubleshooting. Ask them to choose something that demonstrates their specialist understanding, knowledge, and skills, and how they apply this in their practice. And one more thing, ask them to keep the competence requirements in mind when they are selecting their evidence. Good evidence will tick off several requirements. And this brings me to the end of today's video. Hopefully you now have a better understanding about the knowledge and competence requirements for this subsection. And I hope you also have a better idea what questions you can choose to test candidates' knowledge. And my final take-home message? Keep those requirements in mind when selecting questions and guiding the candidate. Bye for now.